Hi there. In this presentation, I want to briefly introduce you to the idea of trajectory, both personal and soul, uh, perhaps more than just collective trajectory, but certainly includes collective. Um, the idea of trajectory is, well, to quote a very funny film called The Men Who Stared at Goats, the idea of personal trajectory in life is that, well, Anne Frank wants to be a librarian, instead of which she ends up dying in a Nazi concentration camp. But she leaves behind her diaries, which are an inspiration to millions and millions of people, her simple spirituality and observations on life. And so that ends up being her true trajectory, to create more light in the world. Um, Take the example of Jesus. Uh, a lot of people thought that Jesus had come to be uh, a revolutionary Messiah that would kick the Romans out of Palestine. Instead of which, he died an ignominious death on the cross. But metaphysical considerations aside, he gets to inspire millions and millions of people for the next 2,000 years. Millions of people to do, well, a mixture of good things and wicked things. But I guess the wicked things were due to the fact that in this world all is corrupted. So um, a lot of good things were done, though. That's for sure. And if you like, the song that Christianity is now saying is now singing is generally one of experience, one of wisdom, one of peace unto the various quarters of the world. Um, Whereas before it was like a completely idealistic movement, and now it's become much more of a wise movement, generally speaking, because it's had to tailor its idealism to this world. It's had to kind of bring its idealism together with how it is in this world, to create a kind of more wise religion than it formerly has been, as it's been sort of kicked around by extremes of thought on all sides. Christianity has, but now it's more of an interesting song has been created as a result of all the experiences that Christianity has had collectively and individually. But be that as it may, I'm talking of songs. The idea is that a soul has trajectory, which is symbolized by this very simple sort of bowl like figure here, and which I have taken recently to visualizing quite actively in my mind's eye, and contemplating its symbology, and something that I've covered this before on this channel. But the idea is that if you look at the soul's trajectory, it's descending into the worlds of the demiurge, and then it's ascending back to the world of transcendence. It started off with a song of innocence, but eventually, at the end of time, it'll have a song of experience, and a song of wisdom, a song that speaks of the wisdom of trying to match the ideal with the pragmatic over the centuries, over the decades, over time itself. But anyway, so soul has this trajectory, and it's not complicated. It just descends into the lower worlds, and then at some point, basically at the nadir of things, there's an intervention by Christ on the collective level, by Holy Spirit on the individual level. And on the individual level, there is also gnosis, which occurs. And at this point, the soul begins its ascending journey back to transcendence as a result of being exposed to the Holy Spirit, or to the Christ, or to the gnosis of Christ as Redeemer. And so you get this point at which everything turns around and goes back the way it came, but with experience under its belt and with wisdom. And I'm not sure whether this is meant to be. I don't think it is meant to be. In Gnostic terms, it isn't. We have been captured by the Assyrians, by the Babylonians, as the Jewish people. We've been captured and taken into captivity by the Demiurge. But at some point, there is an intervention in history by the Christ, and we begin our path to liberation, back to the transcendental realm. And I don't know whether this has been meant. It certainly has an inevitability about it, which is incredibly comforting. So sometimes when I'm at my lowest, I visualize this simple kind of bowl-like shape, which perhaps also represents the Grail itself, and that helps me get through the day. But of course, you'll say that this blue line is a theoretical trajectory of soul, but the red line is the actual trajectory of soul, which, as you can see, has many. There's a long and circuitous route, and sometimes doubles back on itself, and sometimes gets mixed up on itself and becomes like a crazy pattern. But it is the soul's trajectory nonetheless. And it could be that this is the actual trajectory. The blue line represents the actual soul trajectory, whereas the red line represents the perceived soul trajectory. And yet also at the same time, the red line is in this world. So this is what people call, this is the real trajectory, the actual trajectory, and the blue line represents a sort of spiritual ideal, which is a sort of theoretical trajectory of the spiritual path. But nevertheless, this is this is the real. This is really what's happening. Is that soul is going down into the worlds and coming back up again. But we perceive it to be very different and very horrible. And because at each one of these on the red line, if you pick any point on the red line, you can't see any way forward, can you? You can only see the bends in this squiggly line. Or sometimes you get so mixed up you can't see any way forward. It's all going into darkness. And of course, as soul goes down into the lower worlds, it becomes more and more distracted by the demons and orders of demons, to such an extent that it takes an intervention by the Holy Spirit on the individual level, for example, to straighten everything out. And this is represented here by a little straight line, which is a sort of honeymoon period of when you have gnosis, and it's kind of like, oh wow, everything's wonderful, and you see everything. You see the actual soul trajectory as it really is, represented by this blue line, and you can see you're going to ascend, having descended. That what has come down must go back up again, and you have a clear vision, and this is very comforting, very wonderful. But of course, as you'll notice here to the right of this intervention, it doesn't mean to say that the demons are not going to distract you. You will be distracted, and you will be corrupted, and evil will be exalted, even though you are on a path of ascension. It will not be an easy path, and you'll go from one extreme to the other, buffeted and distracted and pulled around by the demons, who will play with you like an orca plays with a seal before it kills it, or a cat plays with a mouse before it kills it. And so it will, but eventually, of course, the distractions become less and less. And eventually, I suppose the red line will sort of coincide with the blue line, as it were, and you'll be shot out of the lower worlds, as it were, back into the realm of transcendental God. where you will sing a new song, a song of experience, a song of wisdom, and the song of liberation, more or less. And when the Jews were liberated from the Assyrians or the Babylonians from captivity of the Egyptians, they sang a new song, which was one of gratitude and exaltation, and wisdom as well. But of course, I'm sort of applying this metaphor of the captivity of the Jews in very broad terms to all of us individually and collectively. And you have to bear in mind that things will not get easier just because of the intervention of the divine. And indeed, sometimes things will get more treacherous because it could be that you think you are wonderful, you think you've been intervened, you think you're on the way back, and you become full of that. That in itself, that thought can become a distraction, and you also go into the sin of pride, which is itself a major distraction. So you will be pulled from left to right as you ascend, and you will have to somehow reconcile the ideal of the Gnostic experience with the actual experience of life, which is the act, but the gnosis is actual, and our perception of this terrible world is perceptual, is what we are perceiving. Nevertheless, we are perceiving it to such a great extent that it seems real, and it is distracting. But the point about this is that if you hold fast to the vision of the ascent of soul, um, then the intervention will have meant something. But you do have to keep remembering the intervention. And as Jesus says, on the Last Supper, do this in remembrance of me. You have to take the Eucharist in remembrance of the fact that you are on a path of ascension, no matter how difficult that path is. But at least it's not the descending path, which is the path into absolute chaos. So I suppose there's order, start off with order, and then you send into chaos, and then the Christ intervenes to re-establish the germ of order again in life. But for those who ignore the intervention of the Holy Spirit, the transcendental God through the Christ, of course, they will be going round and round in ever decreasing circles of chaos and confusion and calamity, and going into the fury, frustration, fear, etc. And But even after that intervention, you will be in danger of going into pride, and pride goeth before a fall. So, even the path of ascension is not where we can all just sit down, have a cup of tea, and rest on our laurels. You won't be able to do that until you have formulated the new song of experience. When you look back, and soul looks back at its trajectory, at where it has come from, and sings a song which is completely unique to its experience of the descent and ascent. And that perhaps is a song which even the angels cannot sing, because they have not um, been on the same trajectory as a human being. Although many angels do follow the same trajectory as the soul, and indeed, of course, the mission of Jesus follows the same trajectory, in the sense that instead of becoming the King of the Jews, well, he has the King of the Jews put on a plaque over the top of his cross, in parody of the fact that he isn't the King of the Jews. He's in fact just somebody being crucified. Um, and yet from this trajectory, as a new trajectory comes when of course, roll away the stone, and the tomb is empty. So that when Jesus continues his mission as on a different level of consciousness, or different level of reality, and it's and he ascends himself, of course, which is very important, and a symbol of the ascension of the human race, for those who have ears to hear, of course, and eyes to see. And for the people that become aware of soul, become aware of soul's journey back to the light, it will be so. And for those who do not have this awareness, well, the path will be hard. But I think also that all soul will get back to the light eventually. And even in Catholic theology, you talk about the harrowing of hell. So Jesus goes down into hell and takes the people out of hell back into the light as well. So there is, as I said, there is a quality of inevitability about our descent and ascent. It will come to pass. So, if you're on the red path where you're being buffeted around and you might lose faith, you can think about the actual path, which is the blue path back to the transcendental realm. That's the path that soul is really on. I suppose what one takes from this is not to lose faith and to keep the faith in the eventual reconciliation of the soul that has descended into the lower realms, the demiurge, and then ascended back to become united once again with the source of light, liberty, love, and life itself, a new life in spirit.